Imagine a world without coffee. No morning espresso, no bustling cafes, no late-night study sessions fueled by caffeine. Now picture a world without universities. No ivy-covered halls, no libraries brimming with knowledge, no degrees to pursue. Hard to fathom, isn't it? Yet if not for the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age, that might have been our reality. This is the story of how a civilization, often overlooked in mainstream history books, became the torchbearer of science, medicine, and philosophy, preserving, advancing, and transmitting knowledge that would ignite the European Renaissance and shape the modern world. From the first hospitals to groundbreaking astronomical discoveries, from algebra to the concept of zero, the contributions of Muslim scholars were not just milestones, they were revolutions. But how did this happen? And why have so many of these names faded from our collective memory? Let's uncover the untold legacy of Islamic civilization, one that still echoes in every laboratory, every classroom, and even in your morning cup of coffee.
The House of Wisdom, where the world's knowledge converged.
In the heart of 9th century Baghdad, beneath the shadow of minarets and bustling marketplaces, stood a palace of the mind, the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. More than just a library, it was a crucible of human thought, where the greatest intellectual traditions of the world collided and merged. Within its vaulted halls, scholars, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Zoroastrian, and Sabian, pored over manuscripts, debated philosophy under flickering oil lamps, and conducted experiments that would echo through the centuries. This was the vision of Caliph al-Ma'mun, a ruler whose thirst for knowledge bordered on obsession. He dispatched emissaries on a grand scholarly treasure hunt, scouring the known world for books. From the monasteries of Byzantium, they retrieved the works of Aristotle and Plato. From the observatories of Persia, they brought star charts and astronomical treatises. From the universities of India, they carried back revolutionary mathematical concepts, including the numeral zero. Even distant China contributed medical texts and innovations in papermaking. Every caravan that arrived in Baghdad carried not just goods, but ideas. Each manuscript a spark that could ignite new discoveries. But the House of Wisdom was not merely a storehouse for old knowledge. Here's the twist. While Europe languished in what later historians would call the Dark Ages, these scholars were doing something radical. They weren't just copying ancient texts. They were dissecting them, questioning them, and often improving upon them. Without their painstaking translations into Arabic, much of Greek philosophy, Roman medicine, and Indian mathematics might have vanished forever, lost to war, neglect, or the slow decay of parchment. The works of Aristotle, Ptolemy's Almagest, and the medical canon of Hippocrates survived because of their efforts, texts that would later become the foundation of the European Renaissance. At the forefront of this intellectual revolution stood Al-Kindi, a Persian polymath known as the philosopher of the Arabs. He didn't just translate, he interrogated. In his view, science was not about blind reverence for the past, but about relentless inquiry. He insisted that every theory, no matter how ancient or revered, must be tested, refined, and if necessary, discarded. Centuries before Francis Bacon formalized the scientific method in Europe, Al-Kindi and his peers were already practicing it, blending observation, experimentation, and logic in ways that would shape the modern world. The House of Wisdom was more than a building. It was a testament to what humanity can achieve when curiosity is given a home, and when knowledge, no matter its origin, is cherished as the birthright of all.
The father of algebra and the birth of modern mathematics.
If you've ever groaned at an algebra problem or cursed a confusing equation, you owe your frustration, and the modern world owes its progress to one brilliant 9th century mind, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Working under the flickering lamplight of Baghdad's House of Wisdom, this Persian polymath didn't merely write about mathematics, he reinvented it from the ground up. His monumental work, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing, didn't just explain algebraic concepts, it created the discipline itself. The very word algebra comes from al-Jabr in his title, meaning restoration or completion, the process of solving equations by balancing both sides. But Al-Khwarizmi's genius extended far beyond algebra. He was among the first scholars to introduce the Hindu-Arabic numeral system to the Islamic world. Those same digits, 0 through 9, we use globally today. Before this revolutionary system, much of Europe relied on clunky Roman numerals, where multiplying 24 by 63 required the patience of a saint. Al-Khwarizmi's arithmetic made such calculations not just manageable, but elegant, paving the way for advanced mathematics, from banking to engineering. Perhaps his most profound contribution was his role in popularizing zero. While ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle dismissed zero as nonsensical, how could nothing be a number? Al-Khwarizmi and his contemporaries embraced it as a mathematical necessity. Without zero, there would be no place value system, no calculus, no binary code, meaning no computers, no spaceflight, no digital age. The concept of nothing became, ironically, one of humanity's most powerful intellectual tools. Al-Khwarizmi's legacy even lives on in the word algorithm, derived from a Latin mistranscription of his name. Every time your phone auto-completes a search, a navigation app calculates the fastest route, or artificial intelligence solves a complex problem, you're witnessing the descendants of his logical, step-by-step problem-solving methods. So the next time you tap a calculator or scroll through your smartphone, take a moment to thank or blame the scholar who, over 1,000 years ago, saw the hidden order in numbers and changed the world with his pen.
The surgeons who revolutionized medicine.
Picture a modern hospital, sterile operating theaters, specialized wards, teams of trained physicians. Now transport that image back to 9th century Cairo, where Ahmad ibn Tulun established something extraordinary. The first documented hospital in history to offer free universal healthcare. This wasn't just a clinic, it was a sprawling medical complex with separate wards for infectious diseases, mental health, and even chronic conditions. Pharmacists prepared remedies, surgeons performed operations, and medical students observed rounds, a system so advanced it would take Europe centuries to catch up. But the true pioneer of surgical innovation was Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi, the 10th century Andalusian physician known in the West as Al-Bucasis. His 30-volume masterpiece, Al-Tashrif, wasn't just a medical text, it was a surgical revolution bound in parchment. Within its pages, he described and illustrated over 200 instruments of his own invention, many of which remain eerily familiar to modern surgeons. The bone saws, obstetrical forceps, and even the earliest prototypes of syringes he designed weren't crude medieval tools, but precision instruments, complete with recommendations for sterilization, a concept far ahead of its time. His groundbreaking work on cauterization, wound treatment, and even cosmetic surgery made Al-Tashrif mandatory reading for European physicians well into the Renaissance. Then there was Ibn Sina, Avicenna to the Western world, whose canon of medicine became the undisputed medical authority for over 600 years. This Persian polymath didn't just compile existing knowledge, he transformed it. He was the first to hypothesize that diseases could spread through contaminated water and soil, centuries before germ theory. He established systematic quarantine protocols, described the anesthetic properties of certain plants, and even documented the psychological roots of some physical ailments. His meticulous classification of diseases and treatments was so comprehensive that when the first European medical schools emerged in places like Montpellier and Bologna, they didn't just study the canon, they memorized it. Yet today, walk into any medical school lecture hall, and you'll likely hear Hippocrates and Galen cited as the fathers of medicine, while Al-Zahrawi's scalpels, Ibn Sina's clinical trials, and the Ibn Tulun Hospital's model of compassionate care are relegated to footnotes. These pioneers didn't just advance medicine, they created its very framework. From the sterile instruments in an operating room to the public health policies that protect populations, their legacy pulses through every aspect of modern healthcare. The question isn't just why their names faded, it's what medicine might look like today if we truly remembered them.
The astronomers who mapped the heavens.
Centuries before Galileo trained his telescope on Jupiter's moons, a quiet revolution was unfolding under the Middle Eastern night sky. In the magnificent Maraga Observatory of 13th century Persia, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi was solving an astronomical puzzle that had baffled scholars since antiquity, Ptolemy's flawed model of planetary motion. With ingenious geometric constructions now called the Tusi couple, Al-Tusi demonstrated how circular orbits could produce linear motion, a breakthrough that would later enable Copernicus to formulate his heliocentric theory. The observatory itself was a marvel of medieval engineering, housing a mural quadrant spanning an entire wall and instruments precise enough to track Mercury's elusive orbit. Meanwhile, in 11th century Cairo, Ibn al-Haytham was dismantling another Greek misconception. While Aristotle believed vision occurred when beams emanated from human eyes, al-Haytham's meticulous experiments with camera obscuras proved light actually reflected off objects to reach our eyes. His 7-volume book of optics didn't just correct this error. It established the modern science of optics, describing everything from atmospheric refraction to the anatomy of the eye. When Renaissance masters like Da Vinci studied perspective, or when Kepler developed his theories of planetary motion, they were building directly on Al-Haytham's work, though few textbooks acknowledge this lineage today. Perhaps most remarkably, this scientific revolution wasn't limited to male scholars. In 859 CE, Fatima al-Fihri, a visionary Muslim woman from a wealthy merchant family, used her inheritance to establish the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, Morocco. More than just a mosque school, it became the world's first institution to grant degrees across multiple disciplines, from astronomy to theology. Its library, which still operates today, houses 4,000 rare manuscripts including 9th century Qurans and the original works of Ibn Khaldun. For context, this university was already 200 years old when Oxford was founded and was granting degrees before the concept existed in Europe. These weren't just isolated geniuses. They were nodes in a vast, interconnected web of Islamic scholarship that stretched from Spain to China. Yet how many stargazers today can name the Muslim astronomers who mapped the celestial spheres? How many optometry students learn about Ibn al-Haytham's camera obscura experiments? And how many universities celebrating their centuries of tradition recognize that a Muslim woman beat them to the idea by over a millennium? The night sky they studied hasn't changed, only our memory of who first understood its secrets.
The cultural legacy, from coffee to music.
That rich, aromatic cup of coffee you're holding? Its story begins in the rugged highlands of 15th century Yemen, where Sufi monks first brewed the dark elixir to sustain their nighttime devotions. By 1450, the energizing drink had reached Mecca, where coffee houses emerged as the schools of the wise. Lively spaces where scholars debated philosophy, merchants negotiated deals, and poets recited verses late into the night. When the Ottoman governor of Yemen brought coffee to Istanbul in 1555, it sparked a cultural phenomenon. Soon, the city boasted over 600 coffee houses that became incubators of political discourse and artistic expression. By the 17th century, Venetian traders had introduced coffee to Europe, where London's first coffee house, called the Angel, opened in 1652, giving rise to institutions like Lloyd's of London Insurance Market and the Stock Exchange. The musical instruments we cherish today similarly bear the imprint of Islamic civilization. The oud, a pear-shaped, stringed instrument perfected in 7th century Baghdad, crossed into Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, with Ziryab, the legendary 9th century musician who established Europe's first conservatory in Cordoba. There, the oud gradually evolved into the lute, and later the modern guitar, its very name deriving from the Arabic katara. Even musical notation owes a debt to Islamic scholars. The system of dividing octaves into 12 semitones, fundamental to Western music, was developed by theorists like Al-Farabi in his groundbreaking 10th century Kitab al-Musika al-Kabir, the Great Book of Music. Language itself preserves this cultural exchange. Next time you check a tariff, from Arabic tarif, browse an almanac, from almanac, or calculate an algorithm, from Al-Khwarizmi's name, you're speaking fragments of a globalized medieval world. The vibrant bazaars of Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba weren't just marketplaces. They were crucibles where Persian silks, Indian spices, Chinese porcelain, and African ivory circulated alongside revolutionary ideas. These aren't just historical footnotes, they're living connections. Every coffee break, every strummed guitar chord, even the very words we use for trade and calculation, tie us to an era when Muslim civilizations served as the world's great connectors. Perhaps the ultimate testament to their legacy? That we've so thoroughly absorbed these innovations, we've forgotten where they began. Like water so pure, we no longer taste its source. For centuries, Europe referred to Muslim scholars as the wisest of the wise. Dante placed Ibn Sina and Averroes in limbo alongside Plato and Aristotle, honoring them as great minds. So why did their legacy fade? The answer lies in shifting power, colonialism, and the rewriting of history. But today, as we rediscover these contributions, we're not just correcting the past, we're reclaiming a shared human heritage. Because science, culture, and progress have never belonged to one civilization. They are the fruits of collaboration, curiosity, and the unrelenting pursuit of knowledge. And that's a story worth remembering.